it's a bit after 7, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll call the meeting to order. My pen is gavel. Mock, gavel. So Chris, do you want to go ahead and take the roll?
Yeah. Chair Kara?
Here.
Commissioner Benich?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
There you go.
Commissioner Lake?
Here.
Commissioner Chabra?
Here.
Commissioner Ganapathy?
Present.
All right, thank you. And would you declare the agenda as having been posted?
Yes, the agenda has been posted per the government code.
Great. So, and we're going to skip over the pledge here without a flag and moving on to any public comment.
No members of the public on the meeting at this point.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved. I can second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. The agenda has been adopted. Okay, we'll move into reports. First up, County Librarian. It looks like in place of Jennifer, we've got the pleasure of Chris.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Well, you have Jennifer's report in your packet, and the library and all of our staff, we're all teleworking like everyone else. A lot of our staff are disaster service workers, so they're all doing, a lot of them are doing their part to help the county in some of its essential services while we're all sheltering in place. We've really made a move to getting all of our services, or as much as possible, to the digital format. And so we've started doing programming, moved our phone, our chat, all of those services to 7 days a week, all through our website and phone. We have call-in book clubs. We've vastly expanded our digital collection. So we've moved from roughly over 150. So we're trying to get as much of our service into the digital format to continue to serve your residents while they're sheltering. Since all at home, created 3,600 e-cards. So all of your residents who may not have a library card now, they can go on to our e-card portal and sign up for a card there and get access to all of our digital services, all of our streaming. Just since we've been sheltering in place, we've had our streaming double in that time. So we're really doing quite a bit on our virtual service. And the next plan for us is to figure out, how do we open our libraries back up? How do we do it safely and in a phased manner? And so we're working on some plans with Heather and our management team, and then the rest of our frontline staff, to make sure that we can start to provide services back to your residents, but in a safe way that will keep our staff safe as well as your residents. And you have the rest of Jennifer's report in your packet. If there's anything that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Any questions for Chris?
Just a comment. Just wanted to say thank you so much for your service. Please do convey that to everyone. I know you're going to be meeting them regularly. And please do stay safe and healthy. I know the public really appreciates all the digital stuff that there is. And thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome, and I'll convey that to Jennifer and the staff.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
I have a comment as well. It's funny, Chris, I'm still going into the census office every day. I'm one of 3 essential workers in the office during the shelter in place period. But we are reaching out to everyone who has applied for a census position. And I can't tell you how many people have said, well, I went to the library to apply, or the library is the only place that I have access to a computer, so I can't make those updates until the libraries are reopened. It really, I mean, it's a much higher percentage of people I've talked to than one would have thought. So obviously your services are and should be considered completely essential. Yeah. I'm glad you've got as many digitally as you can, but I think there's a lot of people waiting for the libraries to reopen.
And Katie, we definitely have been getting messages through our text and through our email asking us when can we start to do maybe drop-off services so people can pick up their holds. When can we start to allow people just to at least come back in to use limited computer service? So we're really looking at all of that. We just want to make sure that we're, in doing that, adhering to our county guidelines and not putting anyone at undue risk. So we're really working on it. I want to make sure that we get your service to your residents, but in a safe manner.
Absolutely. That's we're in this exact same boat, looking at opening sometime in the next 3 weeks. Bob, yes, Bob. Did you have a question, Bob? Bob, I think you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
There you go. Go ahead.
Chris, one way I would think that would be good because of the coronavirus restrictions and would not hurt anyone would be to open up the area where you order a book or a DVD and you walk into the front door and then you just go to that right side where the files are and you can pick out your book and check it out all by yourself on the kiosk and leave, and you hardly have any interaction with anybody. So I would think that would be a very easy way to start opening up the library.
Absolutely, and that's something that we're reviewing now with our staff, and we're really trying to just make sure that we don't jump the gun ahead of the county, which is asking us to shelter in place. But it is really tough because while we're officially not considered essential workers, I think to Katie and your point, a lot of people do depend on us to really supplement their access to information or access to the internet. And so we realize we're in this kind of quasi role, and we're really doing all we can to figure out how soon we can open in a safe way. And absolutely, that's one of the first things we're looking at is how do we provide minimal access so people can just at least come in and pick up their holds.
Yeah, the problem, I guess, are the asymptomatic people. Sorry, Poonam, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. So Chris, I have a question. You know, it's great that you're having a lot of these programs that are now being live streamed, which is fantastic. Question regarding the attendance for these live streaming. Have you seen an increase in the attendance as opposed to having the same programs when they were being run on site at the library?
Yeah, I think we're learning quite a bit about how people are looking to access these kinds of events or early literacy programming, or even some of our ESL classes. So our ESL classes, those are completely booked, and we're doing them 3 times a week. So I think people are really appreciating that digital or remote access. I imagine that even when we come back and are returning to regular service, we're going to continue some degree of virtual programming. And in terms of the attendance, while our in-person early literacy events, you know, we could get up to a couple hundred at a time, but we're seeing thousands of views for these online story times. So they're not exactly the same. They're kind of apples to oranges, because I know that what a child's getting when they're face to face with a performer or hearing a story is something different. But there's obviously an appetite for it. We're seeing lots of attendance, thousands of viewers at a time. So it's something we're definitely going to be looking at, what we learn from the sheltering in place and what do we maybe continue.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions for Chris, for the county? All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Chair
Great.
Kara, just one thing, just maybe to remind everyone, just if you are not speaking, maybe put yourself on mute, because we are getting a little bit of background noise.
Okay. Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Next up is Heather, Community Library.
Good evening, commissioners. So nice to see you face to face after a rather strange couple of months. I just want to echo really quickly what Chris was saying about all of our staff. It's really been amazing. Our staff has stepped up to the plate at Morgan Hill, just in terms of having to learn to work in a new way, and learn new technologies. And it's been, if nothing else, a real team building exercise for us. So you have my report, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things in it. Construction has been off and on our building for the past month and a half, but it is now officially back on as of this week. So we are continuing with construction. The end date for our project has been delayed, but we'll know more over the next couple weeks, and we'll communicate that out to you at the next meeting in terms of when the project will be completed. Our staff has been really, really excited to launch an Instagram page. They just launched it yesterday. So if you wanted to take a look at it, if you're an Instagram user, it's morganhill_library. And the focus of the Instagram page is community connection. So they're looking to post not just information about the library, but pictures really showing how Morgan Hill is pulling together during this time and residents are coming together. In terms of some highlights from the last month, the library launched an Espanol reading room through our Overdrive and Libby app. So we're really excited about that. There's hundreds of titles available for children and adults. I've been taking a look at some of the stats, and over 1,200 titles have checked out in the last month and a half, and tons of children's material, primarily children's, much more than adults. So I think that's really speaking to the fact that people are at home with their children and trying to homeschool right now. As Chris mentioned, we're also doing all the online live programming, and Morgan Hill librarians are doing the story time every Friday at 5 p.m. So if you wanted to catch our own librarians, Fridays at 5 p.m. is the time to catch them. And then also tagging on to what Chris said, one of the interesting things that we're finding is that with at least the Morgan Hill live events, the initial viewership in the moment of the event is lower than we would have had in the building. But then after the fact, the number of people that are going back on their own time to watch it is in the hundreds and into the thousands. So that's a really interesting thing for us to learn maybe going forward, and that people are really interested in seeing things recorded and being able to watch them when they have their own time that works for their family. And then if you're getting bored at home like me and you're trying to figure out what to cook, just to let you know that we've got the Great Courses online collection with lots of different videos you can watch to teach you cooking skills, and you can, expand your repertoire. And with that, at the end of my report, I just listed a couple of online events that are coming up, our ESL programs, some STEAM programs, our Canopy film discussion series, and then the schedule for the Facebook Live story times. Does anybody have any questions?
Fantastic, Heather. Go ahead, Simone.
Just to say bravo again. We're just so impressed. It's such an amazing service, and well, we are all at home. We have some things to do, but all of you are working so very hard. And Katie, thank you for all your service too. Looks like you're working very hard.
Census doesn't stop for anybody.
Thank you. I think we can add thank you to Suman as well, because we are doing a teen poetry contest, and she did volunteer to be one of our judges. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
My absolute honor. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any other questions for Heather? All right, yes, thank you again, Heather, to you and your team. And thank you for sharing that beautiful video. I didn't respond back, but I did watch it and a little bit verklempt. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
It was appreciated. Okay, if there's no other questions for Heather, we can move on. I don't think we have Friends of Morgan Hill Library present. So Historical Society, Miss Kathy.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you. It's been a while. So look forward to the opportunity and continued working with you. An update, we've canceled all of our group events for this year. The board decided that probably, we don't know when the county or city's gonna loosen up on group activities, but we kind of cram people in our house and in the community center. So the reality of planning large group events just didn't seem feasible for the rest of this year. We are working on making adjustments to what we do based on the new normal after we kind of get back to socializing again. So trying to revise our events, determine what's most critical to our mission, what we can not do. The unknowns when we start working on events are, we don't know what the requirements or guidelines are going to be But I'm also concerned that we have a lot of high-risk people who may decide, even though we can have events, they would choose not to attend them. So the planning for those events that goes into it, only to have maybe half of the people make reservations and show up, is a challenge. And then also the disposable income, given the reality of the economy the way it is. So that was why we decided to cancel the events, and we're looking at what we decide to plan next year. We've met with Chris. We're revising our budget, trying to pare it down to bare bones what we have to do to both maintain a historical society and maintain Villa Miramonte. So we're looking to get those numbers to him this week. I told him Thursday, I think, is our deadline. Fundraising is going to be a challenge for us. We, by canceling our events, are probably going to lose between $30,000 and $40,000 this year in income. So trying to figure out how we can live with that much less and try to raise what we can is going to be a challenge. We are working on how we keep engaged with our membership in the community. We've started a blog on our website, which Robin Shepard is working with us. So the blog ties in historical events and relates them to current community happenings. The other day, a post went up for Cinco de Mayo and the history of Cinco de Mayo. It's kind of like St. Patrick's Day and even Christmas. They've sort of been hijacked as reasons for parties and celebrating fun. The real history of those events is provided in that post. So we encourage people to go to the blog. It's also tied into Facebook posts. And both of those the purpose of those is to tie people back into our website. So Founders Dinner was scheduled for September. And that will be a virtual event. We're working on planning that right now so that we can still debut the documentary. This will be our 6th year of Stories from the Past documentaries, highlighting the residents that have impacted and contributed to the development of Morgan Hill. So that, I think, is pretty much it. We're right now really working hard with the board, trying to determine how we shift reality going forward. So, any questions?
Thank you so much, Kathy. Any questions for Kathy? Poonam?
Yeah, Kathy, just a question. I know, the Historical Society and Villa Monte is really struggling with funds right now because there has been a lot of events that have been canceled. Has the board discussed, about having, I don't know, events in the future that can attract more fundraising opportunities with smaller gatherings, many more events that we've done in the past, but with smaller gatherings that the city now allows?
Well, I think that's something that we definitely have to look at. We've in the past talked about having smaller groups and making them larger fundraisers where we've got donors or I don't know, other things. But yes, it's definitely something that we need to look at. A lot of the money that we raised is based on raffle baskets and silent auction items and those things at our events. And I don't see that as being much of a reality either going forward for quite a while. So it's definitely something that we have to look at and pull together a campaign or a calendar around all of those. Thank you for the question.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Kathy? All right, thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us and giving us that update.
Thank you.
And Chris, City of Morgan Hill report.
For this item, I have another item on the agenda to go over the city's kind of response to COVID-19. But for this item, we basically have nothing going on because all of our, as far as our events at the Playhouse, events at the community center and as well as art exhibits, everything is basically on hold because we don't know when we'll be reopening all of our facilities. So
Right.
Yep.
All right, that makes sense. Okay, that wraps that up for our reports. Next is the moving on to business is to approve the March 3rd, 2020 minute meetings. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Jimon? Okay, can I get a second?
Seconded.
Seconded, Paul. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the March 30, 2020 meeting minutes have been approved. Okay, so we're flipping back to Chris then for City of Morgan Hill COVID-19 update.
Chris, you're muted.
Trying to share my screen at the same time I'm talking. Okay. And okay, is that working for people? Screen share?
Yep, looks good.
Okay.
Yes, I can see it, Chris.
All right. So I just we wanted to use this time. It's not a typical item for the commission, but I know that there many of you are staying up to date with the city's response and everything that's going on with COVID-19. So I really just wanted to use this to really go over the two things that are actually the biggest things for the city right now. The first one is our actual response and what we're doing to support the shelter in place and support our residents under the shelter in place. And the second is the fiscal impacts that this is causing the city and anticipated that cause the city. So the first part will be our response, and the second part is really the fiscal impact. And we, it's kind of a bummer because we kind of just did a report on the financial situation of the city to the commission. I believe in February we kind of went through that, and then I think everything's been turned on its head. So just for us in Morgan Hill, the shelter in place began in mid-March, and we, as all of you know, that the shelter in place order has been extended through May for our county. And statements from the state and the county and the governor, like the full return from the shelter in place, as the governor would refer to it as phase 4. Those bigger events that we're kind of talking about, sports events, and likely many of the big events we do, they're talking about the fall of 2020 for those, like pretty regularly, and everything between those high use events and the smaller things that are loosening up now, that's going to really occur over the next 3 months. So what has the city done since then? Well, we declared a local emergency, and there's many reasons for that, but that helps us with resources, and it basically allows us, all of our city staff, to respond as disaster service workers as needed, as well as, if it becomes needed, to look for support from outside the city, as well as potentially get funds back. So we have declared that are related to the emergency. So we have declared that the city in itself enacted an emergency order prohibiting rent increases that goes a little bit high, a little bit beyond what the county has done, and covers a few little things that we're missing. The city continues to provide guidance to local business on the shelter in place order. So telling them what you can and can't do as best we can. At many points, we have to refer people to the county because they have greater knowledge and are more of the final say. We've been advocating for funding to support us. I think many people have heard, much of the initial funding from the stimulus package went to states, regional entities, and cities over 500,000 in size, and then even some funding went to cities that were over 50,000 in size. So basically, Morgan Hill being below 50,000, we've been shut out on any of the federal funding. So we're receiving none at this point. We're continuing to support the county on their plans for DePaul and their efforts to move forward quickly there. We update the the city's web page, the dedicated web page for our own residents, which is real specific to our own residents here. And we are using social media and other items to really keep the community engaged on what we're trying to do. And we do have a call center, and so people are calling City Hall, and kind of we are trying to support them and direct them to the right places when they do call into the city. I know some of you have been on, but we are doing weekly town hall meetings on Zoom, and really working with the CBOs that are providing some of the direct service to our residents in Morgan Hill, trying to support them as best we can. And I'm really helping to, at least at the local level, develop the lists of where people are able to get food and resources and help communicate that. We opened a virtual membership at the CRC, and that was initially for our members of the CRC, but that's been expanded to the whole community. So if you haven't joined that, you can sign up for that, and you can do fitness classes at home real time via Facebook Live, or there's on-demand options too. So it's something we put out there for the community. And then at the Centennial Recreation Center, partnering with the YMCA to provide pickup meals for our seniors that formerly went to lunch there. So, and that's over 100 meals a day. We're providing information to businesses and employees affected through a dedicated webpage for businesses, just trying to help them navigate some of the opportunities they have. And you know, you've seen there's been we've partnered with the Chamber and Visit Morgan Hill to coordinate some of the business resiliency roundtables, providing that tech support to the businesses. We've done some stuff where some of the businesses at front the street, we've relaxed the on-street parking regulations so they can do pickup when they don't have their own parking lot. And then I did mention partnering with others in the community. And I'll kind of stop right there and just ask the commission if anyone has any questions on the city's response to the COVID-19 effort, or any things in general before I start talking a little bit about the fiscal impacts.
Yeah, just a quick question, Chris. I know you're providing virtual membership, free and on demand for patrons. The seniors meals by partner with the YMCA, is that just for CRC membership, or is that free for seniors out there?
That's free for seniors out there, and even when we're open normally, the nutrition program where they can get lunch Monday through Friday is open. You don't have to be a member to use that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Chris, do you have a sense of how bad the COVID-19 has been for Morgan Hill itself? Has it been widespread or not as bad?
No, so the county dashboard shows the number of cases by city. We don't know where in the city, and I believe we had, I checked yesterday, we were at like 38. I don't know.
Yeah, last week we were at 35, so.
Yeah.
Those are cases or deaths?
Confirmed cases, no deaths in Morgan Hill.
Okay.
But
so
that's
no deaths
confirmed.
in Morgan Hill. Okay, that's good to know.
That's confirmed, yes.
That's confirmed.
That just means that they have had tested positive. All right. I know you guys are keeping up to speed, so not a lot of questions, which is great. So now we're going to talk about another thing, also not fun. We really, I think, when we talked a few months ago, talked about the city's general fund discretionary revenue, and those are the dollars the city can use however it chooses. Primarily, a big percentage of that, usually 3/4, goes to public safety, police, and fire. So wanted to kind of talk about that. And you've seen this chart before because I've shown you. I've shown this, but this really shows how the city gets its money for the general fund, and includes taxes and services, those sort of things. And that's important for a couple reasons. The taxes are primarily made up of property tax, then sales tax, and then the transient occupancy tax. And then current services, a really big portion of that is our recreation revenues. So our recreation programs recover almost over 90% of the costs that it costs to run them. And this is how the city kind of spends that discretionary portion of that. We've talked about this before with, public safety taking a very, very big portion. You'll see police and fire at the bottom. So we've done some assumptions based on the budget that's out right now. These assumptions will be updated for our workshop, the council workshop in a week and a half on Friday the 15th. But these are the assumptions that were presented in the initial budget. So the assumptions we had then when we put this out just about 2 to 3 weeks ago was that that the shelter in place would end in the early summer. And that's not the assumption anymore, but that's what our numbers were based on. And things are kind of shifting quickly as I think we all realized, when we started the shelter in place, we assumed that we'd be able to come out of it in weeks or, months. And now we know we're not going to be fully out of it for many, many months based on, the direction from the county and the governor. And so our assumption a few weeks ago was we'd see similar fiscal impacts to what we saw at the turn of the decade with what we called the Great Recession. So these were the revenue assumptions that we had. These are the revenue assumptions of the lost revenue from these sources that we made just a few weeks back, and it kind of shows you the impacts of COVID-19 and the potential economic fallout from it. That the city's general fund would lose $4.6 million in fiscal year 1920. That's this fiscal year ending this June. So that's like 3 months out of the year is 4.6 million. The next fiscal year, the recovery, when we assumed we'd be open in early summer, we'd still lose 4.6 next year and 3 the following year. So that's a $12.2 million impact to the general fund over the next basically like 2 years and 3 months. Our reserve for our general fund is 18 million, the full general fund reserve. So this impact is absolutely huge for the city. So what this shows basically here in this forecast is the city, if we don't do anything to correct this course, our general fund reserve will basically get to 0 in the next 6 years. Now, when I say this was a forecast we had 3 weeks ago. It's much, much worse now. So when we go to present this to the city council on the 15th, it's going to be that 12.2 is going to be much higher. I don't have the exact number, but we know it's going to be higher. And it's just going to be a very difficult time. So this just shows kind of some of the difference in the numbers between what we recommended in January, where we thought we were going to be year end, and now where we think we're going to be. So there's that if you look at that first column down at the bottom, it shows we thought we were going to be at year end with the general fund reserve at 18 million. Because of the impacts of COVID, it's going to be 15 million, and then you can see it for the next 2 years as well, how quickly it drops. And like I said, that was based on our forecast some weeks back, and it's gotten worse. So just a reminder, we are already a very lean city, and we show the number of staff we have per capita. So you can see the population increase, but the number of staff were really at levels we were that much lower than we were over a decade ago. And I know we talked about this before at a previous meeting, and we've talked about what is the cause of why Morgan Hill is much leaner from a general fund perspective. But those things are also very important as we look forward to this kind of economic difficulties, because although we have a large general fund reserve because we're prudent fiscal planners, we're a lean organization. There aren't just a ton of areas where we can just cut and not have an impact on the community. And if you remember, we showed some of our existing unfunded needs. This was outside of the loss. So we were saying, hey, how do we fund the next fire station? How do we fund the enhanced police services? Well, all these things and these unfunded needs are now kind of really far-fetched because we're in this situation dealing with the here and now. So even above that graph that I showed with the general fund dropping, there's $6 million a year we potentially need to fund these other things at an adequate level. What we're going to be planning on doing is the city does have a sustainable budget strategy. So we're going to be planning on using our reserves and fund balances to address this so that we don't have to make really fast decisions that aren't prudent, but we're going to have to make some quick decisions and quick changes.
Chris,
the course.
I have a question. How big is the reserve? And then the other thing, I know that when Governor Brown left, there was a rainy day fund for California. Could cities the size of Morgan Hill, like you said, less than 50,000, tap into the rainy day fund for the state?
Yeah. So to your first question, Commissioner Lake, our general fund reserve was 18 million when this started. We project it to be around 15 million, possibly less by the end of this fiscal year, by the end of June, due to the impact. So, and then the question for the state's rainy day fund, which is at about $20 billion, that is for the state's budget, not for local government budgets. And just an example, we were looking at this. I don't know if anyone saw the article that showed that the unemployment insurance fund at the state has been depleted. And that's nearly $8 billion of unemployment that was paid out since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis by the state. $8 million in a month and a half to 2 months when we're just getting ramped up. So that 2 months, 8 billion. The rainy day reserve is at 20 billion. So likely the state is going to see the same fiscal difficulties as us going forward. So it's not a rosy picture, and we would not likely have access to the state's reserve. So with our sustainable budget planning, what we would do is I mentioned using our reserves to help sustain us as we plan to make changes, but we basically are going to have to reduce our expenditures. The city is going to have to reduce our expenditures to maintain maintain some sort of a general fund reserve. And you can't take the general fund reserve to zero anyways, because that causes cash flow issues, as we all know from running our own personal checking accounts. So we're going to do that. We're going to work to seek state and federal fundings as they become available and look for new revenue sources. But as you'll see bolded, the only thing that we have really control over that we can make changes to without and know for certain is that reduction in expenditures. So we talked about the 12.2 million that we know is lost. It's going to be more than that at the council workshop that we're forecasting over the next 3 years. We've already addressed in the existing budget that was proposed, we've addressed 2.5 million of that over the next 3 years, and we're going to continue to focus on working to address as much as possible without an impact to the community, but that will be a challenge. So I'm going to stop there. I'm just asking if there's any kind of questions on that, the fiscal impact for the COVID-19.
Yeah, I think, Chris, I just want to make a comment that in spite of all this, I think we owe a vote of thanks to our former mayors and city council for the foresight that they did have to actually build up our reserves to $18 million. As you know, there are many cities here in California that are in really bad shape. They don't have the reserves that we do, and I think we are in a fortunate position to start with the 18 million as we go forward. And yes, we do have a challenge ahead of us, but thank goodness that we do have something to start with.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I just had a question regarding the different measures. So one said cutting expenditure, and then also said ballot measures. And so given our population's dislike for ballot measures, did we know what sort would be taking the course to?
So, any revenue measure would have to require voter approval, and
Right.
I mean, the council will discuss that based on recent results and polling. We do not think there's many ballot measures that would really, there's really a big opportunity in this fall, just based on all the circumstances. So that's something that'll be looked into, but we don't know that there's a real possibility of that being a feasible solution.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. So, Michelle, are you still on? I just wanted to check. I cannot see the participants. Make sure no one has a question while I'm in the presentation mode for some reason.
I'm here. We have one attendee, but she does not have her hand up.
Okay.
Debbie, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next item.
Thank you. And then I just did want to add, this is not saying this is what's going to happen, but since some of us, sometimes I feel like the old timer at work now, even though I've only been here since the middle of the 2000s. So a lot of people say, well, what happened the last time around? And we did do some things with our city commissions. I think we'd already come back from this by the time all the current commissioners are here. Maybe Commissioner Lake remembers differently, but we had some different strategies that were all discussed during the economic downturn, and they were from combining the commissions, the LCAC and the PRC, meeting every other month, reducing the staff support, and what we ended up doing the previous time is both the PRC and the LCAC went to every other month for commission meetings. And then it was kind of interesting, actually, we did reduce the staff support, and the commissioners actually were doing the minutes and agendas themselves. We quickly, when I joined, I realized that the municipal code actually didn't allow for that. And so we switched back and we pushed resources back into the commissions, and then we got them to full-time commissions again. But just wanted the commission to think about that as well, because there could be some consideration given to that, and more than likely there would be, again, because it was discussed before. But if there were commissioner thoughts on those sort of things too, you could definitely share them. Of course, you could share them with your elected officials too, that piece as we go forward.
So I had a question.
Go ahead, Suma.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to ask, so is it possible that for commissioners to take over to do the minutes and all that, would that help, or is that still not allowed?
I think when we did it before, the code doesn't allow it, but when we did it before, we were taking detailed minutes, and now we actually take action minutes. So there's not a lot, and we have the meetings videoed, so there's not a lot of work to doing the minutes. As you guys see, the minutes that I put out don't take me very long to do. It just records the actions that you all do. So there's probably not as big a benefit as there was back at that time. But I mean, we're definitely open to different thoughts for sure.
Yeah, I think, I definitely think that given the circumstances with all of the events we had been planning and canceling a lot of stuff until we are out of the pandemic crisis, it makes sense to meet every other month. I do think that one of the problems of combining the commissions was the fact that each commission has a different priority and agenda and focus and strategy. And so combining them, even if you continue to have them, they're, you kind of lose the focus and the planning you need when you come out of this to be effective straight out of the gate. So I would say that meeting every other month makes a lot of sense. So just feedback on some of the points you put there, Chris.
Yeah, I would agree with Paul. I think it makes a lot more sense to keep the commissions separate, but alternate them every other month. So they sort of keep the same placeholder maybe. And I agree with that thought.
Yeah, I agree with that thought too.
I agree with that.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Continue having it every other month, but not in favor of combining the commissions. And just curious, Chris, where does the Planning Commission stand over? That's going to be a separate commission meeting, but not combined with the other two commissions?
That's right. We never considered combining the Planning Commission. Actually, what happened, and Commissioner Benich will probably remember this, we had actually some other commissions or boards. We had what was called an Architectural Review Board, and that board got merged into the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission took on the functions of the Architectural Review Board. We also had a bike and trails committee, formal committee, and that got absorbed by the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we had a senior, it was a senior services commission. And that commission actually was dissolved and became more of a program level commission that did more support for the senior center. So we actually used to have 6 or 7 commissions at one time, and then many of them went away during the economic downturn, and they were combined. And I would just say when we looked at this before in the early 2010s, the Library and Cultural Arts Commission was not doing nearly the amount of things that this commission is doing. And this commission with your subcommittees does a tremendous amount of work without any staff support. So it's a very, very different situation from that end.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The other thing that I think when you talk about the mid-2000s, it may seem like not so long ago, but we're just in a different world today, right? We are actually carrying out a LCAC meeting without being in the facility. We're live streaming on Facebook. So the need for people to be in the building, utilizing the heat and the light and all of that stuff, we can definitely even go every other month online virtually until we determine we will meet every other month face to face, because that is now the new normal, right? That was not there in the mid 2000s. That's something else for the commission to consider.
Yeah.
It's a very good point to just do it in general, because this actually would be perfect unless we have some action items that's definitely needed. I guess all the reports, people wouldn't have to come down to city council. Actually, that would be very useful, I guess.
Okay. And this really concludes my update. So happy to answer any other questions if there's any, or take any other comments or thoughts. That's all I got.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so next up on the agenda.
Sorry, Katie, is this something we need to vote on now? Or is that what you're looking for, Chris? Or
No, it's just feedback. I just wanted to kind of give you guys some background, and if it moves ahead further, I mean, the council will look at their workshop. The city manager will make updated recommendations to the council at the workshop on the 15th, but then the council won't ultimately approve that budget till June. So we could have more conversations if there's some discussion on that sort of goes that direction. But there's no need to vote on anything tonight. I just wanted to get feedback from the commission.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I know from a school-based perspective, we are moving a little bit faster than the decision-making coming from the state. So we're starting to pull back on a lot of things, and I just didn't know if that was something we wanted to go ahead and push for a small council like ourselves. So
Yeah, I would encourage the commission to keep an eye out for the information that goes out for the workshop with the city manager's updated recommendations, and even as residents or commissioners. And then on the 15th, that would be you should get a lot of new information.
okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Morgan Hill Historical Society, looks like we've got another report on Vera Milamonte.
Yeah, I'm gonna start this one, and then Kathy's gonna kind of give their perspective. So, just and I don't necessarily have a PowerPoint, but I just wanted to kind of run through this. So, this is a report that was shared in your packet. It's actually a pretty big report, and the city's been partnering with the Historical Society for many years, and some of the background. The city actually asked the Historical Society to take on ownership of the Villa Miramonte, provided it some funding to fix the Hiram Morgan Hill House, as well as move the museum to where it's at now and kind of put that piece together. But the site is owned by the Historical Society. But if the Historical Society was ever to become insolvent, the site would revert to ownership by the city. So this partnership is a good partnership because it's helped the city maintain these valuable resources with people who actually really care about these historical resources. And from a financial perspective, have taken on the burden of raising funds to make sure those things, those resources are maintained. With that said, over the last several years, the Historical Society has continued to request more support from the city, and the city's provided some capital funds for repairing things in recent years, as well as $20,000 a year in the recent years to help the Historical Society in their operations of Villa Miramonte. Villa Miramonte, or the Historical Society, has had what I call a site master plan for the build out of Villa Miramonte. And we've had dollars programmed in future years for our capital improvement program to develop the site. However, as we talked about that development, that plan has been around for several years. And so the city staff, council, the Historical Society agreed we would do some analysis on the build out of the proposed build out that the Historical Society wanted to do. And primarily that was done because the build out was really focused on turning the site into an event venue. So we hired a company called Management Partners to do this report that's put in your packet to really evaluate the opportunities of Villa Miramonte being used as an event venue before we would move forward on any sort of capital project that relates to building that out. So there's some comparison to other sites in the report and really looking at what it takes to make a successful historical event venue destination. And what we really found is, those event venues that do succeed financially are not really based on the smaller historical resources like we have. They're usually have bigger primary attractions. And there's just some challenges with Villa Miramonte becoming a event venue that would recover full costs, that piece. And then a lot of that has to do with the changing market, even for weddings and renters wanting more full service setups and full support versus just having a venue per se. And, there's some issues, even with, not operating the facility with full-time staff makes it difficult. I know Kathy, they would love to have full-time staff, but do those dollars match out? And then just the market itself and the focus of the market on what people want for those type of venues. After the review, it doesn't look like there's it's not to say that you wouldn't host events at Villa Miramonte, but really the build out, would it be worth the dollars? And there's still physical limitations at the site, even if we put a lot of money in it, just because of the size and availability of parking. And those make it difficult. The other piece that was really identified in the report, and Kathy and the Historical Society concurred, and we'll probably speak more to this, but the goal of the Morgan Hill Historical Society is more to preserve and share the history of Morgan Hill. And it's not necessarily to run events and host events. So there's a conflict in the goals of the organization. Obviously, if you were receiving dollars and getting people to participate in historical type of activities as part of it, that meets the goal. But just hosting events is not part of the goal of the organization. So after looking through everything, there were several recommendations that were made by the consultants. And one was, their first one was developing a one-year pilot program where the city provides assistance to the Historical Society with rentals, operations, and those sort of things. Second recommendation is review and update the rental fee structure at the site. And the third recommendation was, in partnership with the Historical Society and the community, develop a new strategic plan for the entire site, and consider opportunities and constraints for the future site as the home of the Historical Society, as an event venue or just as a historic site. And that really comes down to the focus of the Historical Society first. There were some discussions on alternative models that could be used. And really, the most viable options were looking at sustaining the site as a historic destination, not as an event venue, and looking at that as potentially the model that building out a plan to do it that way. Doesn't mean you don't have events, but really looking at making it the historic destination and maintaining our history and figuring out how we do that without turning the site into a whole event venue. There were lots of options that there were other options that were thrown out. None of them, I wouldn't say none of them are good, but they're all difficult, and there was no silver bullet found to say this is the easy path forward. There was just no easy path forward. And I will say, in a lot of other cities that have more general fund discretionary revenue, as we've talked about, cities are able to spend more of that discretionary revenue on things like their historical resources. And I always pull up the example of the city of Campbell, which has kind of a similar situation with the museum and the historical Ainsley House, but the city maintains those using general fund dollars. And the city maintenance group takes care of it to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, which we don't have that opportunity in Morgan Hill because of our limited dollars. So we've relied on our volunteers to help do that. And that's just the way it's been. So there was a recommended option, and really the recommended option from the consultant is to really sustain the site as a historic destination, not an event venue. Develop a new partnership with the Historical Society that really talks about the Historical Society, really focusing on their long-term strategy, and there really weren't a lot of other viable solutions that came out of this report. And so we've had this discussion with Kathy and the group at the Historical Society on next steps, and we have some different ideas as that goes. I will say that the updated financial, I would say, crisis that we're walking into is going to make this even more difficult. But that's really where we're at, and that's the gist of the report. So with that, I would conclude my comments and ask if there were questions on the report. And then I know Kathy would like to kind of speak on it as well. And there in your packet there is also the response from the Historical Society to the report. that was available to you. And I know Kathy will speak to that. So with that, I would conclude my comments.
Yeah, I really wasn't prepared to speak on this, but we concur with the results of the report, and we're now focusing on dealing with the strategic plan for the site. So when we set our mission up, preservation, in our mind, we included Villa Miramonte in that, preserving our history, the facility, and those kinds of things. It's not called out very clearly in the strategic plan that we set up last year, but in our minds, that's always been part of it. But we do need to be more specific about what we plan to do in regards to the site. So we're now sort of focusing on the two strategies, our organization and making sure that we can sustain and maintain what the Historical Society does for the community, and then Villa Miramonte. Again, if we're not there to preserve that, the reality of that site not existing or being of use to the community, I think, at least for many years to come, is not, I'm not optimistic about it. The challenge that we have is resources, both financial and volunteers. It's getting more and more difficult to find volunteers who want to work on a working board, and we have there's a lot involved in managing the property and the Historical Society. So we're working on coming up with a plan. Our goal has to be to get the back of that property to developed. It, in my mind, is an eyesore. We have people who travel back and forth on the train every day and look at weeds and an unfinished backyard. So it doesn't say much for highlighting the site, making people want to come and visit it and find out more about it, and using it. So use from our members so that our members can meet there and enjoy the site, but primarily for educational purposes and recreational purposes for the community. So pretty much we concurred with the report, and we're doing what we can do to pull together a new strategy for the site that the city can approve, and we can then proceed with getting the back of the house looking nice. Any questions?
Yeah, Kathy, I read the report, and yeah, it's hard reading, but I think it's true. To pursue an enhanced venue there, especially in these economic times, it just does not seem feasible. The other thing that struck me is the limited parking. I mean, to be an enhanced venue, you've got to have really good parking. There just isn't room back there. Just a side question, assuming that you do move forward with the recommendation of the consultant, would there still be room for occasional wine tastings, or, you know, cheese and wine, or chocolate, or things like that?
Yes, I mean, our thought is that even though we treat it as a historical destination, we would still have those occasional rentals, people coming to us, and we would still even promote it to some degree on our website and in literature, that it's a great place for somebody who wants a wedding and a historical, you know, the ambiance of the site. So I think we would continue doing what we're doing, and we probably, we've just upped our rental fees and working with the city. Debbie Vasquez and Mariah and Jose Garcia met with us. So we're upgrading our rental fees a little bit, but again, because we don't have a full service staff and destination. But we do have probably maybe 6 weddings a year there. Other people rent it. We rent out the facilities for nonprofit meetings. Weight Watchers rents the building every week for their meetings. So those things we would continue. It's just not that we would promote promote the site as a full-blown event center.
Right. It wouldn't be expanded, right? I understand.
Yeah.
So I did have a question too. I think what you said was very on point about the back of the building needing some cementing up. It is a beautiful building and I love the museum. So do you think you would be able to go ahead with that, or would that also have to be in limbo for a while?
Oh, I think that'll have to be in limbo for a while. It's going to take more. Chris, in the budget, based on 250,000 for permits and planning, and then 1.8 million, I think, was in the fund that the city set aside in 2021. I think that's been pushed out in the most recent budget that I've seen. That's not, that would probably get some of the infrastructure done. Pretty much parking, based on the historical review, the driveway and the parking has to be in the back of the site.
Right.
So then the plan would be, the minimum plan would be to put landscaping and a lawn back there so that it could be used for occasional events, weddings. People could put a tent up, do something like that. One of the things that we thought of when we were doing the original plan is we don't really have a location where all of our members, if we wanted to have membership meetings, we don't have a place for them to get together. The front lawn right now is the biggest space that we have, and you can't use that during the months of the year when you'd want to get groups together because it ends up being too hot. So having the lawn back there would be great. We could put educational components in. We could put orchard aspects, farming equipment, things that they could use in the living history field trips. I don't know how many of you are aware, but we probably have an average of 800 to 900 students every year come through from area schools for living history field trips, which is a whole morning event with the classes broken up into three groups: the museum, the house they do, and then they do the Centennial History Trail. So we'd like to, we could expand that. We started a nature, what was the word I want to use? A nature garden out in the front part, but highlighting that too, and maybe incorporating more of that in back would be good. So making it a tourist attraction, a destination for visitors and the community would be the goal going forward.
I think just to kind of add on to answer the question, so with the change in focus, we'd really want to, the reason we had the study done to begin with is what we don't want to do is invest the capital dollars into something that ends up costing us more, because we can't even afford to provide the Historical Society enough money to operate what we have. So if we make these enhancements and they increase the cost of operating the site, we're shooting ourselves in the foot right now. So until we have a new plan that really evaluates that and we develop the plan to do that, the city would not recommend moving forward. So as Kathy looks at the updated strategy for the Historical Society and the long-term vision of Villa Miramonte, then we would start taking those steps forward. But that cost to operate is huge for us because we don't have the discretionary revenue to pay for it unless we take it from somewhere else, which could be an option, but it's not. It's a difficult piece, and that discretionary revenue is going to be lower for the next few years too. So making that looking at that plan is really important. And I think focusing on the historical resources and how we do that for our community was the primary result of the report. So I know we still talk about tourism and some events occurring there, but those are going to be secondary, and they're not going to be a driver to like a financial success for Villa Miramonte. So we have to look at the different model.
I think we too, and we've not focused on it because of resources, but need to start working on a more formal funds development campaign, and how can we go to the community and the businesses in the community to get the backing and the support for maintaining the site, preserving it. So that's something that we're going to be focusing on.
Right, because I was just thinking about your idea at the back. I wonder if that could be an opportunity for volunteers to maybe help out for the back, the landscaping or something, when possible, not currently, of course. Right now, we're on bare bones mode, of course.
I think that definitely is something that we've thought about in the future and would look at. That's the advantage of us owning the property versus the city, is that we can leverage a lot of those kinds of resources that would not be practical or feasible for the city to do that. So working with contractors and working with landscapers in the area to see how we can benefit from donated services and materials. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for Chris or Kathy on the Historical Society Vera Milamonte report? All right. Thank you very much, Kathy, for speaking to that as well and for joining us tonight. The next item is the selection of chair and vice chair. So again, I think I turn that over to Chris.
So this one is pretty straightforward because typically it's pretty straightforward because the council has a policy on the selection of chair and vice chair. So in your packet, I put together the list of the order of commissioners. So it's basically whoever's been on the commission the longest without serving as chair or vice chair is the next in line for chair and vice chair. So as Commissioner Lake has, and I'd say there is one piece. If someone's been the chair and it's been 5 years since they've been the chair, they come back into the order. But the only two people that we have as previous chairs are previous/current are Commissioners Kara and Commissioners Lake. Neither of them it hasn't been 5 years since either of them have completed their terms. So the next person in line would be Commissioner Benich, but he has not applied for reappointment. So Commissioner Benich, and I think your intention is you're going to serve the extension of this term, right, for the extension, but not after that.
Well, that's correct. I did put in my letter, I said I would stay on until June 30th. I don't know where the city stands on getting replacements for the terms that are expiring of everybody, not only on this commission, but others. So if I have to extend, I think you mentioned state law says I'm automatically extended unless there's someone that comes in to take my place, unless I resign. And I won't resign. I'll wait until there's someone to replace me. So yeah, but that's right. It wouldn't be fair for me to become a commissioner for a few months and then leave. So that's right.
So if Commissioner Benich planned departure, the next person in line for appointment to chair would be Commissioner Chabra. And then following Commissioner Chabra, Commissioners Thompson and Ganapathy were actually started at the at the exact same time. So they either one could be eligible for vice chair. And that will conclude my comments.
Okay, so we proceed, I guess, with a nomination then, or are we taking comments from the viable candidates?
I think you could. I think typically you would check with the eligible candidates and on their thoughts on serving.
Okay, all right. Well, let's start then with Commissioner Chabra. Are you interested in taking up the position of Commissioner Chair for the next year?
I will be happy to take on the position as Commissioner Chair for the next year. Thank you.
Okay, all right, Chris. So then do we need to vote on that?
Yeah, and you might, if you decide on vice chair, you could probably do one motion for
okay,
both.
We'll do one motion for both. Okay, so that takes us then to Commissioners Thompson and Commissioners Ganapathy. Do you either one have a desire to serve as vice chair?
Well, I would love to, but if Jake would like to do it too, he is most welcome to also, absolutely.
Commissioner Thompson, are you interested in serving as vice chair?
I would be happy to. I do not know the certainty of what's happening with our schools right now. And so I'm a little bit concerned with taking on something in addition to, with the uncertainty that we're facing right now with our schools and potential loss of teachers and different things. So it's a really challenging time. So I am happy to acquiesce for this one.
Okay. All right. Well, you definitely will be next in line then. So
That's all right.
okay. All right. Well, then it sounds like that we've got two people that are stepping up to the plate for those roles. So do I want to hear a motion to make Commissioner Chabra our next chair and Commissioner Ganapathy our next vice chair?
I motion to make Commissioner Chabra our next chair and Commissioner Ganapathy our vice chair for the next year.
All right. Do I have a
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Couple of seconds. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And anybody
Aye.
opposed to that plan?
Resounding aye.
The motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Chabra. You are now our chair, and Commissioner Ganapathy, you are now our vice chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. Congratulations to you both.
Congratulations, Puno.
And Katie, I just want to say that you've been a tremendous chair.
You have.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
you've been fantastic.
Yes, I would absolutely say second that.
I appreciate the support. All right. So at this point in time, we can move on to work plan updates. I don't know that we have anything specific, so I'm not planning on going through the work plan item by item while we're kind of in a hold pattern here. But if anybody's got any work plan updates they would like to go ahead and report on, now is the time to do so. And I mean, I know there's been a little bit of movement behind the scenes on like art and inspiration and a few projects. So let's just sort of round robin and give your updates. Okay, well, go ahead.
Me? Okay. So with art and inspiration, as you know, 1st of May was supposedly the deadline to hand in the applications. That, however, had been changed to indefinite about, I think, over a month and a half ago. I just wanted to make sure that all the artists had noticed that, even though I had sent out a message before. I just sent out a quick email to just remind them that it had in fact been extended. I heard from a few of the artists and they seem very amenable to wait for whenever that's possible. So I thought that was very nice of them. We did have, I mean, we were also told that a few more applications were sent, more than what we've actually received. So I am going to find out what happened to those applications. I think we're missing a couple of applications. And while all that is in limbo, I am still going to just assign numbers and put them onto my spreadsheet and just share it with everyone. So we have that. Whenever we resume, we are going to start with those number of applications and maybe do another round, probably, of applications or something like that. So anyway, that was my very quick art and inspiration. And also yesterday, Paul and I, we attended the Open Artist Studio meeting via Zoom. Just a very few updates with that. As you know, we're just planning for next year and not this year, so we continue to do that. What had been discussed in past meetings was that with the wine passport, you know, the artists would love to carry on doing to do the Open Artist Studio meeting with the wine passport meetings. Sorry, unable to speak. So this year the wine passports have changed from once a year to one every 2 months. And so we had a discussion, and so the artists said that maybe that's not something they would do, but maybe they could do once a year. So I do have an action item of going back to the wineries, to winery committee, and ask them if they are in fact still wanting to do this, and just see what plans we can make meanwhile for next year. So basically what we just did was just discussed what if there was any interest. So far, 14 artists have responded positively, in addition to the Open Art Studio people, so about 17 or 18 artists. We need about 25 artists to make it viable, and we think that that's very easily met. So I think next year we might, if everything is normal, we might actually have an Open Artist Studio. So
Okay.
anything
Fantastic.
to add, Paul, since I was most incoherent?
Not at all. I think the only thing I would add is that we agreed that we would have a monthly meeting,
Yeah.
which is, the Monday before our Tuesday LCAC meeting, because we want to make sure we develop the chemistry and the dynamics of the team, because we're going to plug in someone from the representative of the wineries also,
Right.
so we can really get the dynamics of the team and the roles and responsibilities pretty much set before we actually go into the actual strategic planning. So I think that was a time well spent yesterday.
Thank you, Paul.
Excellent. Great. Does Commissioner Chabra, an update?
So couple of, just a question for Heather. Heather, where are we with the youth art contest? I know that's been postponed. Do we have another date for that confirmed?
We don't have another date confirmed. We were thinking that we would wait until school got back in session, since most of our entries come from advertising through the schools. So we were thinking that would be August, but at this point, I'm not sure when school is going to get back in session. So whenever school starts up, that's when we'll start the contest up again.
Okay. And the second thing, this is probably a question for all of the commissioners. International celebration was scheduled to be on October 3rd. Does anybody have any thoughts on whether we should even have this celebration in October? If we do we do it virtual to a certain extent? Or do we continue having it but have a smaller attendance rather than, what we had, first we were thinking about having a fairly large event, kind of the size of the summer music series. So just wanted to kind of, do a roundtable to see what everybody thinks, because if we do decide to go ahead with the international celebration, then we need to start continuing to have our conversations with the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce and the city, and then have all of the commissioners get involved in this in the meetings with them.
So I just received an email for I think it's the Taste of Morgan Hill is the one over the Labor Day weekend, I believe, or it's in September anyway. It's when we do our children's art show as well, outdoor art show.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere late in September. They're still taking applications. They're still moving forward as though that is actually going to be an event happening at the end of September. I think we all know it's a very real possibility that we will not be holding large outdoor, close together functions like that, even in September. So I just think, my thought is that what we should do is we should wait and we should set a date by which we make that decision. I would feel comfortable if we said, so if today is the May meeting, maybe the July meeting, or maybe we want to have a mid checkpoint between meetings if we're not going to meet again for 2 months now, to say, this is the date by which we're going to make that call, so we don't lose our planning time, but we also don't make the call too early and go ahead and just cancel willy-nilly, just in case, right? Just in case we are in a position where we are moving forward with those types of events by October. That's my 2 cents.
I definitely agree with that. I think if we have the next meeting in July, that puts us right into the summer, when we would get additional guidance from the health authorities, because what they're saying right now is that the social distancing is working, because whether you're healthy or you're asymptomatic, we're preventing people who are vulnerable from actually contracting the virus.
Right.
And they're also saying that in the fall, when we do start getting together, we might see a resurgence of the virus. So I think there's a lot of dependencies. And of course, we're all aware of this, right? We want to be health, safety first. Do they have a vaccine? Do they have a way to treat it? You know, what are the, so I think, Katie, I'm in agreement with you that July is the time we say, make the call on it.
And if I would,
Yes.
oh, sorry. So,
Yeah, go ahead, Simone.
So my just 2 cents is that I wish we could do it, but the reality is that I don't think we're going to have a vaccine for at least a year. And given that, I don't know how feasible it's going to be. Having said that, I will go with the consensus. I will definitely follow what the consensus is, but I feel that probably won't be possible, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we probably all agree with you, Simon. It's just a matter of what's the right timing for making those announcements? And I wouldn't want to really jump ahead of the city or other groups as they're making their announcements. It feels like these things sort of go in waves. So, and the July meeting is still 3.5 months prior to the event.
I agree in that case.
Commissioner Benich.
Poonam, my question to you is, what do you think? What would be your timing for us to make a decision with enough time to still gather all the people and make the planning for it to come together in October?
So I would think that mid-July, we should go ahead about the international performers on stage. I think it's get our help. So I think July is a good deadline, but we should continue having some active conversation with the city and with the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce to see what is it that we can, if we can start securing permits or do things in the background and not have to lose any money or any fees, at least have some active conversations.
Well, and anything that we do now will be useful. Research, gathering, conversations, partnerships, that will all be useful moving forward for the following year as well. It's not really wasted effort.
Right. So the question is, just like we had the celebration, the art celebration that was going to happen in April, I know for this international celebration, Commissioner Gunnapy and Thompson on the list. All the other commissioners, with the remaining commissioners, like to be on the committee and just kind of have a Zoom meeting with
Assuming you're cutting, you're
Chamber of Commerce and contracts also.
You're really cutting in and out, so it was hard to catch all of that.
Okay, so I think my internet connection is unstable. So what I was asking is, for the international celebration, Commissioner Thompson and Commissioner Ganapathy have been on this, on the meetings with the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. Sorry, I missed Thompson in the last few meetings. Would the rest of the commissioners like to be a part of these meetings and participate actively with the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce in the city?
So I think the problem there's, Poonam, is that we have to respect the Brown Rule Acts, or Brown Act rules, I guess, as far as how many commissioners we can have in any separate meeting without having a quorum. So
okay.
I'd look for Chris's guidance to see what we can and cannot join. If there's any decision making or any discussion, I think that we're not allowed to join in. If there is, however, if it's just an FYI, like we're just getting a presentation or something like that, it's probably okay. So I think we just have to be cognizant of that rule and make sure that we're not in violation. That's my thought.
Okay.
I think my only comment here is how far out have events already been canceled for the year? And so.
Yeah, and some are very far in advance, right? But the other events that are scheduled to take place in Morgan Hill this fall, I've seen a number of them are still moving forward as though they're occurring, and they have not announced their cancellation yet. So I I thought we'd sort of kind of ride the wave and not jump the gun too much. I think 3.5 months, hopefully, is plenty of notice. And if we are able to move forward, it doesn't lose us anything. If we can't move forward, we don't feel like we canceled too far in advance. I don't know. I'm happy with what everybody else is happy with. I'm trying to think of what else is already canceled for like the October through December timeframe.
Okay. Anyone else with any comments? Chris, do you have any feedback?
No, I think you guys are in the same situation everyone's in. I think many people are canceling the larger events through the summer based on the governor's comments of stage 4 or phase 4. And October is just kind of on the brink of what we talked about. So it's just the only other consideration is there may be a significant amount of requirements required for even hosting the events once they do open that may make some events unfeasible even if the order's lifted. So unfortunately, you have to, we just kind of, I wouldn't say flying blind, but trying to find our path as the path appears before us, right? So as some people have said, some people are canceling farther than in advance and others are choosing to wait. And I think it really depends on how much work you can do in the time frame leading up to the event, when you know what you're going to be required to do.
I think my only comment to that is just the uncertainty of walking into an inaugural event with all the uncertainty that's occurring, and then the new regulations that might be imposed on us like a month before. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Are there any other work plan updates on any other items? Obviously, it was a sad day last Saturday as art a la carte should have been happening.
Mm-hmm.
Watched that date come and go. It was still on my calendar. Oh, all right. Anything else from anyone? All right. Well, I think that's it for the work plan updates. I know, Chris, we are going to have an agenda item to work on the work plan for the next term. However, I think we're going to wait until we have new commissioners. Is that what was determined?
Yeah.
So they can get their assignments.
Yeah, I think it's really, really up to the commission on what you want to do. Typically, you have a work plan approved before the end of the fiscal year to the council. I would say just, in the work plan that you all have developed, many, many things are ongoing year to year. So it's really your decision as a commission, how you want to do it. And I'd support you if you want to update it now, or if you just like to say, we're going to update it once we get through this situation, get our new commissioners in and figure out kind of where we're at. So
I guess my thought is maintain it as is for now. If anybody, I know that commissioners have things that we discussed in the past that they would like to bring to the work plan for the next term. So be thinking about what those are. We can always have a discussion next meeting as to things people would like to see added or initiatives people are interested in working on. And then we can review those, and then hopefully by the September meeting or August, if we're able to go back to monthly, we would be able to have a work plan review at that time, make final work plan adjustments, and make commissioner assignments, because we should by then have 2 new commissioners, hopefully. Other thoughts, questions?
I just had a question regarding new commissioners. Do we know if that's going to go ahead, or are we waiting for a bit?
Chris?
I know Michelle may or may not be listening because she's running the meeting, but wasn't really running the meeting, but I don't know if she is listening. She might be able to answer better than me, but I have talked to her. Oh, she's opened it.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, go ahead, Michelle.
So where we're at right now is we have asked the commissioners with expiring terms to please stay on. And to Bob's point, although the government code does say they're supposed to, we did ask. And I think where we're at right now is we're really kind of seeing where the budget falls out, because I think depending on what recommendations the leadership team makes and decisions the council makes may dictate how our commissions fall out from that. And so before we went through the recruitment and appointment process, I think we wanted to get through the budget process first. So I'm thinking, you know, our goal is to restart our commissioner recruitment probably end of June, early July, dependent on what the council decides for the budget. Does that sound right, Chris?
Yeah. So that would be, yep. And so that you wouldn't really have new commissioners coming on if it goes to council in July till August at the earliest. Is that fair, Michelle?
Yeah.
And that actually lines up if we have a July meeting where we can discuss, brainstorm, take commissioner feedback on any possible additions or subtractions. And then by the following meeting, either being an August or September meeting, depending on the rhythm we'll be in, would be the time we would have new commissioners and able to make commissioner assignments. I mean, I'd be comfortable with that plan, but again, anybody else, please chime in with your thoughts. Anyone?
That sounds good.
Yep, we're good with that.
Yep.
All right, Chris, I think that's basically the way we'll move forward then.
Okay. So for the meetings until then, we'll just do work plan updates instead of work plan review.
Well, we'll do a work plan update, but I think in the July, assuming we don't have a June, but we do have a July,
Okay.
we can, let's just add just a, you know, open comment period for commissioners to bring their ideas.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a workshop specifically, but we can at least just gather. I just know several commissioners have mentioned things in the past that they would really like to see us take up or work on, or that they would like to individually work on. So
Yeah.
I'd at least like to just get those down on paper.
Okay.
The next
So we'll put
meeting.
it on the agenda that way for July for us.
Perfect. Okay, are there any announcements? Anyone?
Yes, I've got an announcement. I got an email from Anthony Stenberg, and we're up to $750 on donations for the Papa Jasper art sculpture.
Fabulous.
So money's coming in. If any of you are getting the $2,400 from the government, you might want to consider taking a little of that and sending it in for the Papa Jasper art sculpture. In fact, get your name on the plaque for posterity. So you and your children and grandchildren will see your name forever and ever in Morgan Hill.
Thank you, Bob, for that plug. Wonderful. Glad to hear some money's coming in. Excellent. Any other announcements? Okay, well, I just have one last thing. Well, first, are there any future commission agenda items other than work plan input? Okay. So that being said, I would like to personally thank Commissioners Benich and Commissioners Lake for agreeing to stay on and extend their terms, even in these uncertain times, until we have new commissioners to take up their mantle, so we can keep a quorum and keep business moving. So my personal appreciation. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So hearing nothing else, I think we can call of our May Library, Culture, and Arts Commission officially adjourned. And
Stay
gavel
safe,
again.
everyone. Stay safe.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.